However, it's very easy in the state of Maine to perform what's called a people's veto, where essentially after a law is passed, it's very easy for a small group of individuals to gather signatures to place a question on the ballot to veto that newly passed law. And that's exactly what's happened in Maine right now. That law was passed in May. The people, a few opponents of marriage equality, got together to put a question on the ballot for this fall, for November, so that now on November 3rd, a question on the ballot where the people will go out and vote whether or not to repeal that new marriage equality law.
So the law hasn't taken effect yet?
It has not taken effect yet. It will now wait until after that referendum process is complete.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's amazing. But let me just take a slight break and remind viewers you are watching MLG Legal Lines. Legal Lines is brought to you by the Massachusetts Lesbian and Gay Bar Association. My name is Tim Lynch. I'm your host on Legal Lines. I should note that we do not have the option of calling in for this program for this particular session, and we will, however, on the next session. I'm talking here with Ryan Brown of Mass Equality. Ryan, so unlike any of the others, I guess Vermont, they didn't have a referendum.
They did not. It was passed through the legislature and was signed into law by their governor, and that was that. Without
a problem, and same thing with New Hampshire.
Same thing in New Hampshire, yes. And in fact, I'm sorry, in New Hampshire, there was talk about a veto, but we were able to, I'm sorry, in Vermont, there was talk about a governor's veto, and we were able to override that veto, still in the legislature. And then in New Hampshire is where we actually got the signature from the governor.
But there's no citizen initiative.
There was no citizens initiative to repeal that or to prevent it from being passed into law. No, thank God.
Thank God. Now we have Maine, which I guess is the big battleground state.
Absolutely, it is ground zero right now. I mean, after the devastating loss in California, we absolutely can't. We wouldn't be able to survive a loss like that in Maine. And really, we're fighting the same exact battle, where a law was passed, and now it's trying to be repealed at the ballot. So that's what we're fighting.
So, and again, this is a law that's passed by the legislature, signed by the governor, not a court decision.
Correct. That's correct.
Dealing with here.
That's correct.
And yet there's still opposition. What generally are the legal arguments being made by the opponents of this measure?
I mean, I would say the loudest argument that we hear is in terms of it comes down to religion. I think a majority of voters, the average voter, doesn't have a distinction between civil marriage and religious marriage. Yeah. And I think that's really the biggest issue when it comes to the reason that our opponents oppose us, is that they don't see the difference between the two. This is the law that we're working to pass or to prevent from being vetoed is strictly civil marriage. This isn't a bill that would try to force churches or any type of religious institution to perform marriages if that's against their belief system. But this is strictly to put the legal protections or the legal rights in place so that all people can benefit from marriage.
It is as I understand, the bill already takes that into account, or at least I remember it being an issue in New Hampshire.
Yes, absolutely.
And there were amendments to the bill that basically said we're not forcing any religious
Exactly. They explicitly, while it was written in the bill, they actually came out with an amendment right before it was passed, explicitly saying this will not force any religious institution to perform same-sex marriages.
Which is kind of an odd thing in a way, because everybody, I would think, understands that, particularly this day and age where you have so many, interfaith marriages, and some religious institutions will not accept, will not recognize an interfaith marriage.
It's true.
And they have a right to do that. So why this is an issue and causes so much confusion, it just escapes me. But it's true.
It is true. It is true.
People go with that, and people say that, now our church has to marry same-sex couples when
When that's a lie. That's not the case.
It's not the case at all.
Though I do have to say that, I don't mean to speak about churches or religious institutions in a negative way. There are a large amount of institutions across all denominations that support same-sex marriage. And
Yes.
whether or not, if this is something that will be recognized by the state, there are many religious groups that would be willing to perform those marriages as well.
Yes, there's a the Religious Coalition for Freedom,
For the freedom
to
to marry, exactly.
Yes, many religions
Absolutely.
support that. But, religions can do whatever they want, and that's fine. But this is, as you clearly point out, this is a civil institution.
It's a civil institution. It's an agreement between two people and their state government.
So, okay, so that's the main argument against, is what is Mass Equality doing to counter this and to educate the public?
Absolutely. So when it comes to a ballot initiative, we're working with a very large group of people. Here in Massachusetts, when we were preventing the legislature from moving forward, a process to repeal marriage equality, we just had to deal with those legislators, 200 people. Mm-hmm. Now that we're working with on a ballot issue, we need to work with all of the voters of Maine. There's about 1 million people who live in Maine and are registered to vote. We need to convince about 250,000 of those registered voters, number one, to support us, and number two, to actually get out to the polls that day and vote. So that's really what this fight comes down to. It's finding the supporters of marriage equality, about 250,000 of them, and then getting them from their house to the polling location. And what Mass Equality's been doing, we've been doing two things, and we're going to be doing an additional thing on Election Day. But the two things that we've been doing up until now, holding regular phone banks in our office as well as throughout the state, where people can actually be put in contact with registered voters in Maine, tell them about the issue and what's going on, explain what this referendum is, record the people who are supportive of marriage equality. And then the second thing that we're doing is we're actually organizing canvasses up into Maine every single Saturday where we can actually knock on the doors of registered voters, have a conversation with them face to face, and again, come back with our list of people who support us. And that third thing that we're doing is on Election Day, like I said, we have 250,000 people that we need to get out the vote. We need to get them to the polls. We need a ton of volunteers on the ground to actually make that happen. So we're going to be busing hundreds of volunteers up into Maine on Election Day to help us take those lists of people that we've identified as supporters through the phone banking and through the canvassing and actually get them to the polls by whatever means we need to, whether it's reminding them that today's Election Day or providing transportation for them, whatever we need to do to make sure that they can get out and vote for marriage equality.